Dianne Sherman spoke to South Bay Ions recently about her near-death experience and about her resulting work as a spiritual life coach and healer. I had some questions about her work, and she agreed to this interview at my home.
All right.
Dianne, we did an interview about 3 years ago in which we talked about the near-death experience you had in 1981. And for those people who haven't seen the interview we did, which is now on YouTube, could you briefly refresh us so that we can have an idea of what you experienced?
Certainly. In 1981, I went into the hospital to have arthroscopic surgery to repair some damage I'd done to my knee in an accident. And when I was there in the hospital, I was waiting to go into the surgery room, and I was very cold, and one of the nurses was kind enough to put a blanket on me, which made my body relax. I went into surgery, they put another blanket on, and I went out before the anesthesia. And the surgery went very well, and when I awakened, there was a great commotion in recovery. And I was curious about what was happening, but I tried not to pay attention because I was still involved in my own coming into awareness of my body and coming out of the anesthesia. And yet I was curious as to what was happening, so I turned my head to see, and there was obviously a person who was in trouble, and they were working feverishly to help this person. The doctors and the nurses were working on this person, and I hear them saying her name, which is Dianne. Dianne, wake up, Dianne. And I'm thinking, how very odd, it's the same name as mine. And a little while later, as I'm sort of groggy and coming out of my anesthesia even more, I hear them calling her by her first name because they're really trying to get her to come back. And they're saying, Dianne Sherman, wake up. And I'm like startled because that's my name, and I'm thinking, oh my God, they've got the wrong patient. And that's not her name, that's my name. So I'm saying to them, I'm here, I'm Dianne Sherman, and I'm here, and I'm fine. But they're not paying attention to me. And I'm thinking, well, it's probably because they're busy. You know, they're very invested in what they're doing. They're trying to save this person's life, this woman's life, obviously. And the next thing I know, I'm at the bottom of the bed, and I'm looking at her, and it is me. And I see them working on her, me, but I have no connection to it whatsoever. And from there, I floated up into the ceiling to the corner of the room, and I was overlooking what they were doing to her. And I didn't feel any discomfort. I didn't feel any loss. I didn't feel any fear in watching what was happening. I felt very comfortable being there instead of there. And then I was kind of extricated out of the room energetically and went into the tunnel. I had all the darkness and blackness in front of me, and I kept looking for a bit of light. And as I'm struggling to find just a glimmer of light, there was a glimmer all the way as far as I could see. And I focused on that glimmer of light because I felt safe knowing there was a little light at the end of the tunnel, I guess you would say. There was a little light, and that light started to grow and grow and grow, and pretty soon it was everywhere. I was encompassed in this gorgeous light. And as I moved through the light parted, and it was almost like billowy cloud kind of light. It was very ethereal and wafting, and I'm floating through it, and there are 2 rows of monks standing in front of me. And I say monks because they were in brown monks' robes with the hoods up. And as I floated between them, I could feel the unconditional love emanating from them. And as I got to the end, the one on the very end on the left stepped forward, and he spoke to me, and I say he because he had all that wonderful male energy of fatherliness and protectiveness and powerful and in charge. And he said, you cannot stay, it's not your time, you must go back. And I was begging and pleading at that point to say, I have finally come home, I can't go back, you can't send me back, this is what I've wanted my whole life. And he repeated, "You cannot stay, you must go back, you have a child." And I did. My daughter was 6 years old, and I was divorced. And he said, you must go back, you have a child, you cannot stay. And I'm thinking to myself, who would take care of my child? And as I'm thinking about who would be the one to take care of my child the way I wanted her to be cared for, I was back in my body. And I awakened in my hospital room next to another patient, and I knew I had been changed forevermore.
Dianne, listeners from different religious traditions often insist that an image from their own religion appear in a near-death experience, and when that doesn't happen, they're often upset. How do you account for the image of a monk or image of monks?
Well, it would be a reference point for me in my life because I went all through Catholic school. Monks were always, to me, the gentlest of priests. And that was a comfort zone for me. And I had been to many of the missions, and there were always monks in the missions, and it was just a reference point for me.
Mm-hmm. But this particular monk at the end on the left had no face.
Right. When I looked, it was just energy. There was no face.
Uh-huh.
But there wasn't anything frightening about that.
I'm wondering if it's possible to have a near-death experience without images. Why was the image necessary in this experience?
I think I needed that kind of energy and imagery to be comfortable in where I was, to feel safe in where I was. I think psychologically you need a touchstone of something that's familiar so that you're not kind of losing your mind. Mm-hmm. That you're able to absorb and be present with what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that these images were a projection on your part? How would you account for them?
I have no idea why it occurs the way it does. It may have been a projection. I think it was just something that would be analogous to my life, that I would understand.
Mm-hmm. You said that everything you wanted was there in that experience?
Everything I had ever wanted in life. That sense of belonging, that sense of unconditional love, that sense of connection, these feelings of unconditional love that was blissful and joyful. And, we're all looking for love, and we have this idea that it's going to be everything. And I had been married, and I loved my husband, but this transcended that so completely. I mean, there just aren't even words to talk about the kind of bliss that you feel.
Mm-hmm. Hearing you relate this experience, one, it sounds profound, and two, it sounds simple. It sounds like something that happened in a very, very short period of time, and yet you changed your life completely. And so much of what you've experienced in life and learned since then have been a result of these few moments.
Exactly.
When I hear other people talk about their near-death experiences, it's the same. It's a moment of bliss, and yet compressed in this moment, it's almost like the Big Bang that reverberates throughout their lives.
I think it's similar in a way.
Uh-huh. So how did the experience change you?
Well, at the time that I had the surgery, I was sort of knee-jerking through my life. I was divorced. I was in my early 30s. The work that I had been doing for 17 years was no longer available because I'd worked as a model and I was now too old. And I needed to find a new path. And I think the hardest part for me is that I was not feeling settled within myself. I was feeling like a failure because I'd been through divorce. Being raised Catholic, it was important to me to have stayed in a marriage, but this was untenable for me. So everything I knew had changed. My parents were gone. I just didn't have any grounding in that moment in time, and I didn't have hope for the future. And I was worried and concerned and frustrated and angry, and I was kind of in the victim role. And since the experience, I was allowed to have a great understanding of how it all works. that I'm not a victim, that life is happening through me, not to me, that my perceptions are indeed creating my reality, and I have a choice in every moment. Do I want to be happy?
And what brought you to these realizations?
Having that sense of unconditional love, having the knowingness that we're not judged on any level. We are loved beyond the pair. You can't even quantify how much we're loved. And if that's our true reality, if that's what we have to look forward to, if that's what we're coming from, why wouldn't I find that within myself here? And that was what I set out to do, was to understand how I could create that kind of heavenly experience here in human form. I realized it was possible. I realized I didn't have to die to have that.
Mm-hmm. Now, from this experience, you noticed some abilities like clairaudience, clairsentience, and kinesthetic abilities. I'm not sure what those are. What were they, and how did you discover them?
Well, I realized soon after leaving the hospital that all of a sudden I was picking up everybody's information. I could hear people. I could sense them. I could read them. I knew where their pain was. I knew what their stories were. I also was knowing things that I couldn't know about people that were coming to them, that were going to be coming in the future. The kinesthetic part of it is something I think I've had, but it just got exacerbated in this experience, and that is the energy and the information. It comes through my pores. I mean, mm-hmm. I feel everything. I have to be careful when I see movies and TV shows that there's nothing violent or whatnot, because mm-hmm. I feel it. I feel the pain. I feel the discomfort. I feel it all.
Mm-hmm. So how do you deal with all this? How do you channel it into something that is not overwhelming?
It's taken me my lifetime to figure that one out because I'm such a sensitive. I use different techniques, putting myself in a bubble, a hologram. My newest thing is putting on a spacesuit with a helmet and seeing myself zip up, and knowing that I have a force field that nobody can mm-hmm. penetrate. Mm-hmm. So I play with it, and there are times when it works and times when it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. And you use these abilities to help people?
I do.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Well, one of the gifts I came back with is the ability to see people in their essence. I don't see the facades of the personalities. I see who they are at the core.
What does that feel like or look like?
Oh, it's divine. It's absolutely divine. I mean, to be able to see right now you in all of your heart energy, absolutely in your heart energy, your divine connection, that's what I see in your face. Mm-hmm. I see your preciousness. And part of my job is to mirror that back to people so that they get a sense of who they really are, not who the ego has told them, not who life has shown them to be, but who they really are at the core.
So you feel people are connected? The people you meet in life are connected to the source that you came from?
Everybody's connected to the source.
And
we're all coming from the one.
But yet the people you meet don't know that.
Right.
So what does that do to you, seeing people in their essence from source and knowing in your heart that they're not aware of where they come from?
Well, in the beginning, of course, I wanted everybody to wake up and know what was going on, and then I realized through time that unless somebody asks for help, it's none of my business. They're exactly where they're supposed to be. If they're awake, that's wonderful. If they're not awake, that's perfect too. Everybody has their process, and I don't have a judgment on where they are in their process.
Mm-hmm. When you were in this other state, this near-death experience, it was, you would say, another dimension.
Absolutely.
What does that mean? I mean, we're used to 3 dimensions that we can see, and because this is what we can see and feel and hear and sense, we think that that's all there is. So what is it like to slip into another dimension?
Divine.
What does that mean?
Otherworldly. It's almost like a fantasy. These are places and experiences that our language just doesn't cover. All I can say is that you feel so at one with everything that is. You feel a sense of knowledge about everything that is. It's like you've connected into the universal wisdom, the universal source of love. It's so satisfying, and that's such a bad terminology for it, but it's so, you're in bliss.
Why can't these dimensions be described in words?
Because they're divine, and we don't have the sensitivity to speak about divine. It's something, it's like rapture. It's something that we look towards, but it's not something we know how to quantify.
Mm-hmm.
You can only be in it.
Right.
You know?
And you would love it if people could experience this.
I would love it if people knew that they were loved unconditionally. I would love it if people knew that there was no judgment on them, no matter who they are. I would love it if people knew that we were all connected and that everything we say and do affects everyone else.
Mm-hmm. So as a healer who has had this remarkable experience, how do you remove blocks and obstacles that prevent people from realizing who they are?
That's the best part of what I do. It's allowing people to see the truth of what they're carrying inside. You know, we all have a belief system about ourselves and our experiences, and part of the work that I do is to change the perceptions of what they've really experienced, to reframe it so that they can experience it or own it in a different way. And it takes the sting out of it, it takes the pressure out of it, and it allows them to be more open to a fuller experience. And the vibrational work that I do helps to eliminate the blocks and barriers. You know, I will do clearing codes and breath to help disperse it.
What do you mean by vibrational clearing?
Everything has a vibration to it. Everything in this room has a vibration to it. The thought forms that we carry, the pain and suffering that we have stored in cellular memory, that all has a vibration to it. So I ask the Creator for the codes and frequencies that neutralize that energy, flatline the wave of that energy so it's able to be dispelled out through the body. And breath is what allows it to go.
Why is breath helpful in doing this?
Because the sound, the white noise of the breath, is part of what makes it flatline so that it can be released out of the body.
Let me see if I've got this right. When you spoke yesterday at South Bay Ions, did you say that we are God's self speaking through us?
That's my interpretation, yes. We afford God the opportunity to experience God's self through all of our experiences.
And you said that when you wake up in the morning, you're grateful because you say that everything has a gift in it?
Everything does. Every interaction has a gift in it. Every person you come across in your day has a gift. And you have a gift for them. We just don't know what it is. It'll be a moment in time where something will be said or something will be felt that will be a gift. Maybe it's a piece of information that's needed. Maybe it's a reminder of how things really are instead of us getting into our fear minds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what does it feel like to be aware of that?
Oh, it's fabulous because I'm like an expectant child. You know, I'm always excited about where I'm going, what I'm doing, and who I'm going to be with because there are always so many wonderful moments.
Mm-hmm. Dianne, you said that none of this is real. This is an illusion. This is a dream. The other side is real, and nothing is solid. Now, a lot of people are listening are going to have trouble with that. What do you mean when you say that none of this is real?
To me, third dimensional reality is just a place where we come and have experiences and process and connect. It's not all there is. I always thought that it was everything. It was the be-all and the end-all, being here in a human form. It's not. The most important part of us is what's on the other side, our spirit, our soul that transcends the body when it dies, that goes on through eternity, that can have lifetime after lifetime or experience after experience. That's the biggest part of us. This human vehicle is a temporary thing for this lifetime.
Yeah. Now, a lot of scientists listening to this interview are going to be really put off because they're not going to be able to subject what you're saying to any tests. So how do you respond to these people?
Oh, well. I only know for me, from my experience, what's true. Everybody out there has to figure out what's true for them. And if my words and expressions don't resonate with them, then it's not for them. And that's okay. We all have to find our own way. I don't have the answers for everybody. I only have the answers for me.
Therefore, it's important for you to do right by yourself.
Absolutely.
And speak your truth.
Absolutely.
Even though somebody else isn't going to get it. Can this benefit others by speaking your own truth always?
I agree that speaking your truth is the most important thing we do. Now, that doesn't mean speaking something that's going to hurt somebody on purpose, that kind of thing, just because you think that's your truth. I'm talking about in every interaction when you have an opportunity to honor yourself. In other words, if somebody's asking you to do something and you're really not in the mindset to do that, or you're not on board with it, and you agree to do it anyway because you're afraid to upset them, that's going against yourself. When you are in that circumstance and you say to yourself, this is not where I need to be, this is not what I want to do, and you honor that and you abide by that, it will make everything for you wonderful and for the other person. We have to be true to ourselves.
You said in your talk last night that everyone is a mirror for everybody else.
Yes.
Can you...
How many times have you heard somebody say, wow, I really have a person with that. really have a problem with that person because of X, Y, and Z. And I would say to them, what is it about that person that wrangles you? And have you thought about where that part is within you? And it's just a mirror of you looking at that part of yourself that you're not liking.
You said that in your experience of life, they're playing with me, with your own life experiences. How do you understand that?
Well, I think the universe is very playful. I mean, you can think about angels, fairies, devic forces, whatever you want to call it, guides, masters. I think there are these wonderful energies around us that play with us. I think they're trying to lighten us up. Listen, we're supposed to be here having a good time. And I think at times they're kind of playing with us in order to say, come on, let's have some fun. Let's get silly. Let's stop being so serious. Let's lighten up.
Yeah, you said that life is an adventure. And I remember a quote by Anais Nin where she said, life expands or contracts according to your courage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, for me, stepping through my fear and owning my courage has opened the doors to more magic than I ever knew existed. I always knew that coming back from the near-death experience, the thing I needed the most was to find magic here, was to be able to have that connection of bliss in some way here. And doing more of stepping into my truth, stepping into my own ownership, has really allowed me to experience that.
Can you give us an example of a technique that you might use to enable you to do this?
Well, one of my big fears in life was money and the lack of. And as I worked with the energy of that, every time it would come up inside of me and I'd get anxiety, I would just have a conversation about, all right, this is a place where I am fearful, but it's not a place that needs to own me. It's just a thought process that I'm having. It's not a truth. And I appreciate the fact that I'm able to look at this and work with it and understand that, all right, so today I'm a little nervous about it, but tomorrow I'm going to be better. And each time I honored it and worked with it and talked to it and said, okay, so what are the steps I need to take to make myself feel stronger about it? To trust that Spirit's got my back and that my needs are met every day. And that's the big trick, is understanding that God, Source, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is here all the time, supporting us in all of our desires, and we have to trust and relax into that. We're always trying to control it and push through things. We need to just get our hands off of it and go for the ride.
Yeah. And yet we have a mind that tells us that that's not true. You've said that we have to be careful about what we think because our reality depends on that. And yet, I think...
It's not what we think. It's listening to the thoughts that are going around. If you're going to think, make sure you are thinking the thoughts you want. Do not think that it is thinking you. And that's the misconception. That monkey mind is a loop going around, and people listen to it and they think it's something wise talking to them. And it's just a loop of negativity.
And you can, from that, you can deduce there's no free will, and you're the victim of your thoughts going around.
Exactly. You believe in the negativity it's spewing out. You know, we gave the ego a dictate a long time ago that it was the ego's job to protect us from hurt. And so the ego's always telling us, don't do that, you're going to get hurt, or you're not big enough to do that, or you don't have enough talent to do that. And that's not the truth. Now, spirit on the other side and our intuition on the other side is constantly feeding us good suggestions, supporting us in knowing that we are good enough, big enough, strong, whatever it is. And that's what we pay attention to. We pay attention to the positive, not the negative.
And yet you said that we're never going to get it right.
No, we're not. We're never going to get it all right in our life. We're never going to get it all done. And we don't need to. It's not an expectation on us. It's not a dictate that we came in to do it that way. We're here to mix it up, to interact with each other, to love each other, to connect, to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Getting back to the lessons of the near-death experience, you said it's important to die joyfully. You will meet the world that you project.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
I believe that, well, first of all, if you can be at peace and in love with yourself when you die, the transition is just beautiful. If you are going kicking and screaming, it's more painful. If you're fearful, if you're worried about judgment on the other side, if you're worried about, I didn't do this right or that right, and I have guilt about all these things, you're just hurting yourself. Nobody needs you to be perfect. Nobody expects you to be perfect. You're loved and accepted as you are on the other side. We need to love and accept ourselves before we leave. It just makes the transition so much easier. Mm-hmm. And if we're worried about judgment, if we're worried about fear and brimstone and heaven and hell and all of that, we're going to experience a little of that on the other side because that's where our mindset is. We're going to be looking for it.
Mm-hmm. In the meeting last night, I think you concluded your talk with a statement. You said, I feel that this is going to be my final time here, my final life here. Mm-hmm. How do you know that, and what does that mean for you?
I know it because we all have our own internal knowingness, and I really trust that, and I come from that. It feels like I have stepped through the layers of things that were holding me back for eons. It's just a knowing that this is it, and that's why I need to speak these things, because it's important for me to share what I've gone through, what I've learned, where I am with it now, to let people know we can all do this. You don't have to have a near-death experience to do this. And if it is, in fact, the last go-round, then I feel like, yes, a job well done. I'm here.
Dianne, thank you so much.
Thank you.